What's up, Hiroshi? Let's light this candle. Welcome to the Whitfield Report, very special edition of the program, Monday night. In fact, I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, pre-recording this show here at NGC Studio, and this is going to be something I'm going to try, doing for the remainder of the year and into next year. I want to obviously keep on doing live shows, but I also want to post shorter pre-recorded podcasts throughout the week, just to kind of, keep the YouTube channel going, the Rumble channel going, the podcast feed going, and keep on providing content for you guys. So these shows will be, somewhat shorter, I think, but should also be pretty useful. So, contact info as always. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @SamDeBear_NGC. Follow me on Gab and Parler at Sam Whitfield. Facebook.com/Whitfield Report. TheSamWhitfield.com. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts at. And Patreon.com/Whitfield Report. And I'm thinking, we might start doing more exclusive podcasts over there in the new year as well. But anyway, folks, for those of you who may or may not know, tomorrow, December 15th, 2020, marks the end of an era. Dennis Miller, the comedian who is known for many things, such as his appearances on, radio, and also his role as Weekend Update anchor for a large portion of the 1980s and 90s. HBO talk show host and, podcaster in recent years. He will be officially hanging up his microphone, both in the comedy world and in the podcasting world, officially as of tomorrow. And for those of you who know this program, you may know that in addition to Rush Limbaugh, Mr. Miller was a big part of, influencing the style of this podcast, or at least the latest incarnation of the podcast, which is the Whitfield Report, kind of making it more into a political satire / commentary, pop culture commentary, show, kind of conversational. I mean, this podcast went from being very much strictly political from 2008 to 2012 to just kind of being more of a purely, free-form type of podcast. And, the Dennis Miller radio show, which is mainly where I got acquainted with, Dennis back when I was not in high school. That was my main impetus for, getting to know Mr. Miller and kind of diving into, comedy as a way to, express opinions on different topics. Now, of course, I did grow up in the era of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, but Jon Stewart's show always seemed, I guess, more staged to me. And then by the time I was in high school, which is when I started getting into, politics more and more, Jon Stewart was kind of a meme at that point, and he was thinking of stepping down from The Daily Show anyway, and, me being more on the conservative side then. I saw Jon Stewart as more of a flaming liberal. And I didn't necessarily want to be the conservative Jon Stewart, but I wanted to find a way to inject humor into, my podcast. And also, I wanted a way to kind of inject, pop culture into the show as well. Well, as many of you also know, who listen to this podcast regularly, I am a huge fan, some might say an acolyte of the late but great Andrew Breitbart. And Andrew Breitbart, that is, not the website in its current formation, but anyway, I remember reading a Breitbart news headline, or maybe it was from Andrew's Twitter directly, and he said he would be hosting for Dennis Miller that day. And I remember hearing my dad, or maybe it was my stepdad, mention, Dennis Miller in passing one time, obviously referencing Weekend Update. But, I hadn't really paid attention to who Dennis was until Andrew Breitbart mentioned him. So, me being the follower of Breitbart I was at the time in high school, I tuned into the Dennis Miller show, and I think, if I remember correctly, this is actually the first interview that I remember catching between Miller and Breitbart, and so I want to say this is from 2011. And by the way, thanks to Larry O'Connor for posting this on his YouTube channel. I don't even know if Larry posts to this channel anymore. But anyway, so this was the first time I heard Dennis Miller, and I think this was like the second or third time I had heard Andrew Breitbart speak as well, and both of them made me crack up uproariously.
We are joined now by what I consider to be the contemporary right's Benjamin Franklin, Andrew Breitbart, founder and proprietor of Big Hollywood, Big Government, author of Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World, the estimable Andrew Breitbart. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Did Ben Franklin like fart jokes with his kids?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly why I drew the direct parallel.
Okay, thanks.
And he had a massive horn for Parisian women, so that also ties into it.
I've watched every Emmanuel, including the foreign one.
Even Emmanuel in space before Obama dismantled the program.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson.
The role of Emmanuel in space was to tell the space people that they were good at math.
Speaking of Emmanuel Creaky, just back from 3 days in the marsh with Tucker Carlson. How was that, and what were you doing?
I'm a sportsman, as everybody knows. And I watched a bunch of talented sportsmen shoot Fez inadvertently. So
you didn't hoist a gun to the shoulder and take out a mallard?
They kept telling me that I was hitting them, but I think they did that out of sympathy when the group would shoot it. But I have no skill set at that part of the planet that exists in the middle of the country. I still have a blue state, Whole Foods aisle shopping kind of mindset.
Yes. Well, it's best to find pheasants in their natural habitat, i.e. under glass, I find. Speaking of...
Which I remember at the time, it's not as funny to me now, but that line about pheasant being best under glass from Dennis made me crack up back in the day. Very subtle but funny. And I've also done shows about Andrew on this channel as well, and I'll link to maybe a few of those up here somewhere in the video and down below in the description as well. But anyway, yeah.
Dangerous critters, though. The Occupy, to be up close and lock eyes, and I'm sure you've been at a sawhorse with some of these young radicals. What's the Occupy LA movement look like up close and personal, Andrew?
Well, I actually went to that one right when it started out. I'm not sure that I could get away with that at this point because they're pretty organized. The first thing that happened when I got there, I got myself my own personal SEIU minder. About 350-pound guy with a ponytail. Seemed kind of like On the Waterfront meets Bill and Ted, and that's pretty much a good description of this group of people.
And why did the SEIU guy? Why was he willing to shepherd you around? Was he a fan, or?
Clearly a fan. He knew who I was when I was there. I've had my confrontations over the last year or so with the SEIU, and they've gotten quite violent. This guy wasn't the violent sort, but when I went out through the crowd with video cameras, he wanted to forewarn the crowd that I was there to, quote-unquote, incite them with questions, penetrating questions such as capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down. And all of them in a sea, in a cascading sea of thumbs down. You know, he was like, stop, he's trying to incite you. And there's this one guy who's in the middle of giving a thumbs down, and he just changes his direction of his thumb. It's like, I'm going to move it. And he just barely moves it to a thumbs sideways.
Now, the shocking part of this story that there are opposable thumbs in that crowd, I guess, is what I'm shocked at. We're talking.
This is the anarchist demonstration against me and Glenn Beck. Well, I've been following the same group of people. I went to Wisconsin twice, and I see we're literally finding the same people that were in Wisconsin or
fanning class war, and Ed Schultz talking about how.
It's like, I'm going to move it. And he just barely moves it to a thumbs sideways.
Now, the shocking part of this story that there are opposable thumbs in that crowd, I guess, is what I'm shocked at.
Yeah, sorry, folks. I fucked up the time code there real quick. But anyway, I wanted to pause and just say that. Keep in mind, this is back from 2011, and, Miller here is saying that he's surprised that, anyone could be opposed to, capitalism in these crowds, and I just think that is kind of an interesting, kind of time capsule moment that we, that Occupy was considered shocking at one point to many of us because there was Occupy, and eventually, as I've said before, Occupy morphed into Antifa. And I mean, Antifa, I don't want to get too political here, but considering that Antifa is flat out, murdered conservatives now, nothing has really surprised me. So, but, I guess 2011 was indeed a simpler time. So.
We're talking to Andrew Breitbart, the author of Righteous Indignation. Excuse me while I save the world. Now, I've seen sound bites this morning from as disparate sources as Paul Ryan hinting that Obama is fanning class war, and Ed Schultz talking about how this all could lead to a civil war. Am I a pessimist, Andrew, to say that I never thought I'd say these words, but I sort of agree on Ed Schultz. I see the country lining up for something. I'm not saying it's a CGI battle in the movie Troy, but there's something coming down the path. What do you smell? You're out there in the streets.
Well, I've been following the same group of people. I went to Wisconsin twice, and I see we're literally finding the same people that were in Wisconsin, or when I was in a confrontation down at a protest organized by Van Jones, against the Koch brothers. We're finding the same people at all of the events that have happened since, President Obama came to power. I mean, this was the organizer, community organizer, and this is community organizing. You're witnessing community organizing, and each demonstration, whether it be a demonstration against me and Glenn Beck in Chicago, whether it be a demonstration against Scott Walker in Wisconsin, or whether you see them bringing in the anarchists and the socialists in a much more blatant fashion like they have, this is community organizing. About your pessimism, there's an interesting thing. In 1968, it was the corner of Haight and Ashbury, and there's a juxtaposition here, the intersection of scary and hilarity. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about this, is that when people look at this, they start looking at these people and say, this is too funny. There are too many bizarre, goofy events, the way that they talk in their consensus with their twinkles up and twinkles down. The people, in the New York Times, heralding one kid who lost his virginity as presented to the tribe by an elder statesperson. I think that reminds me of the scene in Endless Love where her mother watched the unflowering. So it's just the bizarreness and the human spectacle and the funny stuff that's seen on TV. You just played Bang on the Drum. Right now, the biggest schism within this group of people who want to take over the world is the drummers versus the anarchists. Mm-hmm. And if that's going to be the revolution, I like our odds.
What the first one to break out into some sort of violence, the Oakland one. Do you think they have a Harvey Keitel fixer character that is sent to the place where it's first to get violent? You say you see recurrent characters there. I'm wondering if they've sent their black ops guy up to Oakland. Why did that break out first in your eyes?
Nobody was paying attention to that. We had a stringer who was on the ground. I can't say what employ he was, but he's a pretty high up guy paying attention to what was going on live television. And it was violence and the group threatening the local television, which is sympathetic to their underlying political cause, but telling them they can't be there in a public park filming them going against the First Amendment. And then these people started to attack them and dog sick them. One reporter, whose first name is Amy, I forget her last name, Amy Holyfield, had a guy say, we kill white B-words like you around here. And they didn't even report that type of thing. The mainstream media does not want to cover the violent and scary nature of this thing because they weirdly sympathize with the soft push towards a soft socialism. So they understand that there's going to be a few cracked eggs. But it wasn't just Oakland. We have been scanning the local news television feeds. We had riot police and bedlam in Albuquerque. There's been in San Francisco last night, the riot police were out. So it's not just in Oakland where things have gotten hinky.
The riot police in San Francisco often initially mistaken at this time of the year for theme homosexuals going to a party.
Well, there's been a lot of body fluid exchanged at a lot of these Occupy things. So if you're young and experimental, there may be a place for you in the Occupy movement.
The big government piece, though, put a more the subversive face on this, though. Crowdsource this. Emails expose Occupy Wall Street conspiracy to destabilize global markets and governments. When I look at the crowd, I don't sense it runs that deep. Is there somebody in there, though, in a planning tent, or somebody who's... Are these the operatives you speak of that you see on a recurrent basis? That's the overall plan?
Well, look, the best laid plans of mice and people who have watched a lot of television and Simpsons episodes, and this is a group of people who have great aspirations, especially in the planning stages, and that's what the emails that we discovered showed. They included Rolling Stone reporter Matt Taibbi. They included Dylan Ratigan from MSNBC advising these people what they should do. We also discovered a New York Times reporter who got arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge in the Occupy Wall Street thing, consorting with the socialists and the anarchists, and they were talking very openly about escalating things into more illegal places, kind of like taking over banks and trying to confront the police. And I think that one of the dangerous things about having the socialists and the anarchists who have been involved in this type of stuff internationally, whether it be in Greece or anti-WTO events, is that these people have sophisticated plans that they've tried time and again on trying to provoke the police into getting them to fight them. And what they're doing is that they're taking those provocations off of the internet, and they're editing out that, and all you see is the police brutality, as they describe it, when they're the ones who are instigating for the purpose of trying to bring people into the movement based upon sympathy that the federal authorities have gotten out of control.
We're talking to Andrew Breitbart, who has bigger cojones, quite frankly, than the underdog balloon in the Macy's parade, founder and proprietor of Big Hollywood, Big Government, author of Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. And if it does break out, look for Andrew with the Buford Pusser stick and fall in behind him. That's where I'm heading right away, because this is a courageous cat. Now, how's your life, baby? You good? Everything good?
Oh, everything's great. And look, if the audience wants to help me out, if somebody out there is a seamstress, if you make a Captain Capitalism cape and outfit, I will run through Occupy Wall Street with $1,000 bills, and I will give these people precisely what they want.
I think that says it all right there. Thank you, Andrew. Say hi to Orson for me.
Okay, bye then.
Bye-bye. The guy's fearless. What can I say?
Captain Capitalism.
Captain, he would do it.
He would definitely
swear
do
to
it.
God, he would do it.
Oh, it's much simpler times, folks, and in retrospect, don't you think? You know, I covered this with Christian Blatt in my interview with him earlier this year, but I, for one, wonder what Andrew would have thought of all of this. You know, with Trump getting the nomination and then getting elected, and President Trump's term and the 2020 election and all this. And obviously we'll never know for sure, and, you know, I don't like to speculate too much, but still, I think he is he's definitely someone whose opinion I would want to know about these things on. And, you know, as I've said before, you know, it's just a shame that he passed before his time. But irregardless, because of that interview, I sort of became a fan of Miller. And at the time when I started listening to him, I was still in high school and in Denver. So KNUS News Talk 710 was the affiliate in Denver, I believe. So at that point, YouTube had started coming around, or, you know, I'd started adding more, you know, videos. It was more of a common thing at that point. So I started looking up, you know, I could on who this Dennis Miller cat was. And I found some SNL videos and watched a bunch of those, which I can't play here because otherwise, you know, NBC will copyright strike my ass, even though it's, you know, under fair use, but they don't care. So, you know, SNL is out, but suffice it to say, I found a bunch of his old SNL stuff, and I also, for a time, Netflix had a bunch of his episodes of SNL on Netflix, so I got to watch the Weekend Update stuff, which was hilarious. But then I also found Dennis Miller's old HBO show, Dennis Miller Live, And I've played this clip before on the show whenever I bring up free speech. But this perhaps was one of the most, funny yet cogent monologues that I've heard on from Dennis, and I think it's still relevant today, even in 2020. This is Dennis Miller on free speech, and I think this is from 1998, maybe, if I remember the date on the video correctly. But anyway, here's Dennis Miller's rant on free speech from Dennis Miller Live, cut number 1. Go.
It's an interesting conundrum. What do you get for the guy who kills everybody? And a judge has appointed a psychiatrist to perform an evaluation of suspected terrorist Zacarias Moussaoui to determine if he is competent to waive counsel. Hey, Doc.
Oh, wait. What am I saying? This is right after 9/11 when this segment aired. And I knew that.
Just a tip. If he thinks we're all out to get him and want him dead at any cost, he's not paranoid, just perceptive. You know, maybe we ought to wiretap the voices in Moussaoui's head. You know, there are times I'd love to shut this guy up, but I guess he deserves his right to speak. I might not agree with it, but I'll defend to your death your right to say it, Moussaoui. Now, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but after September 11th, freedom of speech in America has become a topic that's touchier than a Vatican summer camp. You know, our founding fathers were supreme champions of freedom of speech, but we should never forget that Alexander Hamilton was shot over something he said. Because in their infinite wisdom, our founding fathers also gave us the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, which is a reminder that while we can pretty much say and do whatever we want, you better watch it, asshole. The free speechers always argue the slippery slope theory. If you muzzle free speech before you know it, we're living in 1984 and Big Brother is picking out our ties for us. Those seeking to control free speech, on the other hand, argue that if we allow Johnny Soulpatch to burn the flag, before you know it, we're living in the Lord of the Flies and Piggy is fighting for his life. But there is a middle ground between government rule and mob rule, a place where only those who can make obscure references to literature, art, and pop culture on their weekly cable show will be allowed to speak freely.
You're talking about the Whitfield Report, right, Dennis? Yeah, see, Dennis predicted the Whitfield Report 16 years before it happened. Or I guess rather planted the seeds for the Whitfield Report. Whichever one you want to go with, folks.
Utopia, if you will. You know, our enemies see our diversity of opinion as evidence that we are weak and divided, but as the very presence of a vibrant marketplace of ideas that ensures our continued survival. That, of course, and the high-tech weapons that can lock in on the glint off a scimitar from 5,000 miles away. As much as I believe that our leaders have followed exactly the right course in wiping out the Taliban assholes who gave safe haven to the murderers of my fellow citizens, I recognize that the dissenters to the war and the verbal defenders of our enemies fulfill a vital function in our democracy. Specifically, they give me somebody to hate whose name I can actually pronounce. As much as we don't like to admit it, you got to say the freedom to bash the U.S. government is a unique and beautiful phenomenon when done with a certain degree of panache. I've noticed that in the Middle East, when they burn the American flag, they aren't even using real flags. They're just using flags painted on the sheets. And this really pisses me off because there are hard-working kids in Taiwan who make our flags who can use every penny they get. As a matter of fact, at this point, the only thing that galls me about someone burning the American flag is how unoriginal it is. I mean, if you're going to pull the freedom of speech card, don't be a hack. Come up with something interesting. Fashion Old Glory into a wisecracking hand puppet and blister the system with a scathing ventriloquist actor. Or better yet, drape the flag over your head and desecrate it with a large caliber bullet hole, okay?
Whoa.
Once...
By the way, I once used that line on a bunch of, on a couple of, there actually were a couple flag burners at my college a few years ago, and I actually used that line on them as a way for the expression. It did not go over well, but, you know, if I had to steal a burn from anyone, I was glad I stole from Dennis. So, hat tip to you, sir. So...
Thank you for almost sauntering down the Jingo Road with me. Once hotbeds of free speech, college campuses across the country have engaged in an arms race to see who can craft the most restrictive speech code. Years of political correctness, binge drinking.
Now keep in mind, folks, this was back in 2001, maybe 2002, when this took place. When he was doing the segment. So no, there wasn't social media. The internet was still in its infantile stages at this point. And I think, you know, compared to today, you know, censorship of speech on college campus, it might have been bad, but it wasn't anywhere near as to what I've been, you know, as what I had to endure or what my peers have had to endure. Hence why I'm here to not necessarily take up Mr. Miller's mantle, but I guess rather kind of continue his commentary in my own way. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Dropping Bing cherries out of your ass into a shot glass have bred a backlash now where anyone who dares to stray outside the conventional school of wisdom in college is ostracized, slapped with the mark of Cain, and worst of all, made to forfeit their student activity fee discount to see Dave Matthews Jam, and more importantly, Inspire during spring fling on the quad. You know, whatever happened to the notion that college was a place where the best minds in the nation vigorously debated all sides of an issue while the rest of us went back to the dorm and tried to get laid? Usually by ourselves. You know, I have no problem. I have no problem with people who respond to what they don't agree with. I enjoy the drama of a toppled podium and the sound of microphone feedback as much as the next guy. What I do have a problem with are the people who fail to see the glaring hypocrisy of screaming the word "shut up" into a bullhorn. Why should even the most repugnant ideas receive the same freedom of expression as more accepted ones? Because the American system is less a free marketplace of ideas than it is a playground of free ideas. And the best way to dispense with the unpopular ideas is to let them roam free on the playground so they can have their asses kicked up and down the jungle gym by the cool ideas. You know, the ability to be critical of our government is what makes this country great. Thanks to these freedoms, we get the hip irreverence of Art Bookwald, the folksy yet politically incisive song stylings of Mark Russell, and the fantastic parodies of the group The Capitol Steps. And it's for these reasons alone we must squash free speech immediately and become a police state. You know, we need to let those who repulse us have their say alongside those whose speeches make us rise to our feet in applause. How else will the shiny pearl of wisdom stick out against the black velvet of stupidity? It's better to just let the Ku Klux Klan march through your town than it is to waste your time and money trying to stop them. Instead of challenging their right to free speech, use your energy to point out to your children the irony of the fat guys in the pointy hats and the pea-stained bed sheets, spouting forth all sorts of monosyllabic eugenic claptrap, and all the while claiming to be the master race. Of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
So in terms of, you know, politics, I think those are two examples of Dennis at his best. You know, first with Andrew Breitbart, and secondly on his own HBO show. But not only was, Dennis influential on me politically and obviously injecting humor into politics, but he also introduced me to some of what I would consider now to be some of my other favorite comedians. For example, I know that Norm Macdonald has kind of had a resurgence in the last few years, and Norm is actually pretty big among millennials, believe it or not, amongst my peer group. But I'm lucky to say that I was ahead of the curve on the genius of Norm Macdonald, thanks to Mr. Dennis Miller, and because of the Dennis Miller radio show. What do I mean by that? Well, you'll just have to listen and find out.
Here you go to Cobb's in San Francisco. What do you like to do during the days in San Fran to unwind? Do you go?
I just work on my ventriloquism.
Oh, how's that going, Norm?
It's going great, man. I thought Rusty and I'd do a little holiday song for you.
Oh, you're kidding me. Let me kick back here and put my feet up in front of the fire, you and Rusty. Which puppet is Rusty? Refresh me.
Rusty's just my friend. You know,
This is also very appropriate because it's Christmas time, folks, right? So there was a period of time where Norm would call in on the old radio show, I guess every Friday, and do a segment with Dennis, or a few, and he was into puppetry at this time, I think. And I think this was also the period where Dennis, before Christian kind of became the on-air co-host, but where Dennis also had a co-host named Salmon at this point. So, and I wasn't part of the DMZ yet at that time, but anyway.
I'm having a lot of trouble with my cranky old man. I don't know if you remember old Alec Majerison, the virulent anti-Semite.
Yeah, sure, I remember. What, are you kidding me? I have a plaque commemorating my first meeting.
I'm trying to get rid of that guy because you know he's a Holocaust denier. That's no secret. He's an enthusiastic Holocaust denier, and I've had it up to here with this character. You know, the man, he's just a waste of wood. But I don't know what to do. One of my Jewish friends suggested that, why don't I just throw him in a fire and burn him? But I say two wrongs don't make a right. We're not here to talk about that. Let me get Rusty out here. Rusty, say hello to Dennis. Hey, Dennis, how are you?
Hey, Rusty.
What?
Hi, Rusty.
Who's the dummy here, me or you?
It's me.
It sounds like it's you.
I'm sorry, Rusty. Let me give you my man voice. Hey, Rusty, how are you doing?
Yeah, dummy. Hey, come on now, Rusty. That's ridiculous. Calling Dennis Miller a dummy on his own radio program.
Now, can I jump in here for a second and tell you, here's how crazy Norm is. I'm sitting here believing that he actually has a puppet. Like, it's not enough for him to fake the puppet act on the radio and over the phone. You did pull out a puppet and have it on your arm right now, don't you?
Of course I have my pal Rusty here. Yeah.
What do you boys have planned for us today, Rusty, Norm?
We're going to do a song, according to this dummy. Would you stop calling me that? You're the dummy. Now, listen. We're going to do a song, a beautiful song. Why? By the way, Rusty, what are you doing for Christmas? Are you going to see your family? Oh, sure. In my family tree, it's an actual tree. Okay, now that's just ridiculous.
You're actually overlapping dialogue here, Norm. You're not even putting a second between you and the puppet's voice.
Now, Rusty, are you ready to sing that song with me? Sure.
There you go.
Okay, I'll start. Here we go. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose. And if you ever saw him, you would say that he was a drunk. Hey, come on! Well, that's ridiculous.
What the?
Come on now, don't ruin this. This is a classic. I'm sorry. All right, now let's continue. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to town. Rudolph, with your nose so bright, have you been drinking some bathtub gin? What? Okay, now that's enough. That's way beyond the pale.
Stop it, Rusty. Stop.
I wish you'd kick the bucket. Like what? Kick the bucket. What are you talking about? You said tail.
The hilarious thing, too, is the entire time this is going on, I can picture Norm actually doing the... I can actually picture Norm doing the puppetry here.
Bucket. It's a synonym. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, now that's ridiculous. You're the dummy. Okay. I'm sorry, Dennis. This is going nowhere. This is ridiculous. I apologize for Rusty. I can't go on with this. This is just an abuse to the whole idea.
All right. Now, what separates Rusty's old man voice from the old Holocaust denier's voice? What? Give me that voice.
You don't want to hear from him, do you?
Well, I know Rusty's just wetted the palate for a little more puppetry.
I swore I'd never use this guy.
It's like the Stones doing "Sympathy for the Devil" after Altamont.
There we
never
go.
thought I'd
Alec,
see you play it.
Alec, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay, I guess. Yeah, I suppose. What do you think of this Christmas? What do I think of it? I'm not going to celebrate no holiday where a bunch of bearded New Yorkers killed our savior. Hey, come on now. You're going back in the case. I'm sorry, Dennis.
Oh, Lord.
Like that
You didn't quite have control of the posse today, but I realize it's the holidays are amongst us, and that they're a little petulant this time of year.
I can never keep these guys under control.
Norm, you are an absolute wild man. I'm Dennis Miller, and I'm going to go rest now for a little.
Oh, I hope that doesn't get this video popped. Yeah, by the way, they used to use "You Get What You Give" as the show theme for the old radio show too. Good times. All right, now this isn't necessarily Dennis. This isn't necessarily Dennis's part in the radio show, but there is one. The old radio show had a bunch of funny callers as well. During the old Dennis Miller radio show days. And one of them, I don't want to spoil this for you, but I'm a big fan of Kiss, and of Gene Simmons in particular. So I was elated when I first joined the Dennis Miller zone, because I heard the best Gene Simmons impression ever. I don't want to mention this gentleman's name yet, but he is a genius. This is one of the best impressions you'll ever hear of any celebrity. And let me try and cue this up. And this is great. I am about ready to die here of laughter myself.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Congratulations to all the other inductees. As I understand it, none of them wore makeup, which I don't know how they performed, but congrats regardless.
Hey, ask Ask Peter to pull up at this light and buy a pack of oranges off Ace.
Peter. Yes, it's Tuesday. Which corner is Ace working?
He's at Doheny and Pico.
He's not only is Ace on Star Maps, he sells Star Maps. But as I understand it, Dennis, you're going to be performing at the Irvine Barclay Theater on the 4th of April. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
I'll be there the week before, if you don't mind me plugging this. I'll be performing love letters with a large pile of cash and a mirror.
Oh, Robbie Lorich, you are a freaking genius. Merry Christmas, my friend.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, so Rob Lorich, who some of my Twitter compatriots will remember, he used to be on Twitter at Rob Lorich, sporting the Vincent Price egghead from Batman Avatar. And unfortunately, Jack Dorsey whacked Rob Lorich's Twitter account for being politically incorrect. And that is actually one of the reasons why I began to hate Jack Dorsey so much. Because Jack, you bastard, you took Rob Lorich from us on Twitter. But you can still follow him on Instagram, although I don't know how active he is. I'm going to try and get him on the show before the end of the year, but yeah, his Gene Simmons impression is great as well, and I realized the audio was cut off for that first one, for part of it, so I do want to play a few of these other ones, because they get progressively better.
Gene Simmons, who I saw perform the other night at Chavez Ravine, as the oldsters say.
Yes.
On line one. Gene, how are you, my friend?
I'm distraught, Dennis. I'm sorry. The timing couldn't be worse. I'm just finishing something up here, if you don't mind. And I'll get to my point. But in preparation for our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame appearance in April, I wanted to rebuild a few burned bridges, as it were. So I asked Ace to move into my home. And would you like to say hi?
Sure.
Ace doesn't feel like using his words today, Dennis. I'm just finishing up his lesson, if you could bear with me. Now, Ace is playing at the Hall of Fame ceremony in April, Ace. How many people were in the original lineup of KISS? How many? 4, right? Do you remember how we make 4 with our hands? You make a W and you add the pinky. That's right. I'm proud of you. Now, please, Dennis, 1 second. Now go into the kitchen, Ace, and tell Shannon that I said you can have 1 push-up out of the freezer. All right? He's a good soul, but it's costing me a fortune having him here.
You've got to get one of those shock collars, the electric collar I found work on the Kiss B team. Anyway, back to you, Gene.
Wait, is that copywritten? Somebody trademarked that?
I don't think there's a Kiss Shock Me shock collar yet,
Shock
Gene.
Me collar.
Yeah.
No, the reason I called in, Dennis, is apparently earlier this week or on a previous Beneath the Planet of the Past, Present, Future Hour,
yes,
someone, I was told by Kiss Army members that you said you saw Kiss perform at Dodger Stadium over the weekend. And
yes.
You were unimpressed, and you said we phoned it in.
Well, but Gene, you have to understand that I now appreciate the alacrity with which you phone it in. That's the joy of Kiss for me at this moment.
Well, first off, Des, Kiss never phones it in. But if we ever do, I can assure you that will be a collect call. But more important, I have a question. So Kiss played Dodger Stadium?
Yeah, they brought you out in a little golf cart. You don't remember that?
Well, I jest, Dennis. I know all things Kiss, every movement of
Yes.
Kiss. In fact, every time you kiss your wife, I get a nickel.
And by the way, how is the litigation for extended tongue usage going against young Miss Cyrus? I know that you hired Roy Black from Florida and are bringing copyright infringement against her. How's that going?
Well, Miss Cyrus will have a surprise next time she signs a check or a credit card bill and realizes there's a little TM next to her name. Right? I don't mess around, as you know. But no, I kid about the Dodger Stadium gig. KISS is a franchise now, Dennis, and the show you saw, Tommy and Eric were there. The Paul character was played by one of the Nelson twins. And that particular Gene you saw was the artist formerly known as Gallagher 2.
I thought so.
It's still KISS.
I know. I understand. Gene, I take it back. I love the show, and you're a genius.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Gene Simmons calling in from Los Angeles to set us straight on the...
Well, thank God, because there were a lot of questions hanging in the air.
You know what? He's such a genius, Rob Lorich. I almost feel I'm at that point now where I like when Andy would do Tony
Clifton, yes.
Tony Clifton, that you shouldn't say that's Andy. Lorich is a genius. And I almost feel like, should I say that's our friend Rob Lorich after? That seems too earthbound to me or something. The things are so pure and funny that I almost feel like just moving on to the next call. But then again, I want Rob to accrue the
I think that it's good to get his name out there, and for our listeners to be like, oh yeah, who's that guy that calls in? Oh yeah, that's his name, Rob Lorich.
Ronstadt.
KISS.
And I've already been copyright struck.
Last night, inducted Hall of Fame on phone, L.A., Gene Simmons. Gene, congrats.
Thank you, Dennis. I love your taste in music. I wrote that, and you know what my favorite part of that song is?
What's that?
The part where you play it long enough that you have to pay me a royalty.
Gene, did you see any sort of vindication of your musical stylings last night, or was it strictly a commercial endeavor for you?
You're speaking as if those are two separate things. What is this language you're talking to me? And no, it was a wonderful night. We were finally recognized, at least by some in the rock critics world, as to our importance. But everyone's been asking me if we're going to have a reunion with all the members, maybe a tour or something. And as far as that's concerned, using all members, past, present, Paul and I are still in discussions with all the former members, so all is not lost. So like the old saying goes, it's not over until the slightly overweight man in kabuki makeup sings.
Now, I know you derive great pleasure from the fact that Chris and Freely are still on rotary phones, right?
Well, I'm very proud of Ace. I've told you that before. I could not be more proud of him. He did really well at the ceremony last night, and he's been working hard. And of course, I want to reward him for his efforts. In fact, just the other day, one of his little friends in the neighborhood was telling him how much fun his family had at a water park. Now, Ace didn't fully understand because he hasn't learned the word park yet. But he became very excited at the idea of going to a water park, whatever that means in his Ace head. And, it's been costing me a lot having him at my house, so I improvised. But so instead, I told him that the water park is a magical land that you can only get to when you close your eyes. So I blindfolded him, walked him around to the backyard, stood him in a half-filled kiddie pool, and Peter threw water balloons at his head for a half hour. Loved it. He was so excited, Dennis. For the rest of that entire day, I could barely get him in his jammies when it was time to go night-night.
And where's Paul today? As we had Jagger Richards and Lennon McCartney. Where's Paul?
Paul's out promoting his new autobiography. He'll be on your show, I believe, next week.
That is correct, Gene. He will be here in our studio on Tuesday.
Did I read that Paul's deaf in one ear?
He is actually, yes.
That is correct. And, Paul only lives 2 minutes from me. As he likes to say, he can see my ego from his house.
I've seen you guys sharing a Western omelet up in Beverly Glen upon occasion, so I know.
We've shared more than that.
All right, Polaroid King, the great Gene Simmons calling in from Los Angeles. Congratulations, I should say, on being
And if you didn't know that was Lorch, I mean, here's the thing: you could mistake Lorch's impression of Gene Simmons for Gene Simmons. As people have said recently to me, Lorch does Gene Simmons better than Gene Simmons does Gene Simmons. And I think that's accurate. But the reason I bring that up is because the radio show had just so many funny and wonderful characters. Gene Beretta, too, a frequent caller on the radio show and the podcast, is also hilarious. Just fantastic. So I know this is from the old radio show, but I did want to touch more on that. Even though the podcast, the Dennis Miller option, is technically ending tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, those are some of my personal highlights from Dennis Miller's wonderful career, and what his, some of my favorite moments of his that I just shared with you. So anyway, folks, I know that this was kind of a mishmash and a compendium of various things, but I want to thank you guys for watching and or listening to this, and to Mr. Miller himself, thank you for being a influence on me and several others, I'm sure. I wish you well in your retirement, sir, and nothing but the best in your future. So anyway, folks, that'll do it for the podcast for today, and I want to thank you for listening, and I'll be back on Thursday for the Thursday edition of the show. Until then, folks, God bless, God save this great nation, God, freedom, legacy, in that order. And as Dennis might say, that's the news, and I am out of here.